And we are back. What up, though, people? It's Wake Up Woodward. Thank you guys for choosing to kick off your day with the Woo Crewest. Lions victory week, and they're getting prepared to play an old nemesis of Aaron Glenn. That is the Seattle Seahawks. Beat the brakes off the Seahawks. They came into our city and beat us and put on a ski mask. Cleanse us. Cleanse the city, please. But you know what? They kind of got hit with the injury bug at the... You know what? If you're going to get hit with an injury bug, I'd rather be early in the season.
I agree. However, if these injuries... Well, the Marcus Davenport one looks like it's season-ending. The Frank Ragnow one, partially torn pec. Derek Barnes looks like it's definitely going to keep him out of the Seahawks game. And Broder, I just got to say, with those three guys out, you don't know the status of like Iffy or Rakestraw, just to name a few. It's going to be kind of hard to beat the Seattle Seahawks. That was kind of a sobering victory Monday in some ways.
Yeah, it's not a gimme, and it never was, but it kind of goes up another notch because Marcus Davenport is someone you would want in a game against Geno Smith, in a game where they have two good running backs, whether K9 plays or not. Mm-hmm. You love to see what he was doing, sacks or not, the way he crushes that can, as they say, on the opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, and also Frank Ragnow, depending on what his status might be. We know how good he is, whether he's played that great these last couple games or not. I think he's playing better than people are giving him credit for, but those are big losses. And Derek Barnes, he's played 95% of the snaps. These are players that are going to contribute to the Lions. You know, we talk about them getting to and winning the Super Bowl. Those players are contributors to Super Bowl winning teams. Now the question is, how did Brad Holmes do building this team, building the depth out on this team? What are they going to do? We'll talk. Maybe they dip their toes into the trade market. Maybe not. But we got to believe, at least for the time being, that they're going to test their depth. They're going to give opportunities to guys. And last thing I'll say, before the season, we look at Week 5 bye as not a good bye week. Might be a blessing in disguise right now.
Especially for somebody like Frank Ragnow.
Yeah.
Maybe he can gut it out for the Seahawks game, although partially torn pec. That's
it's tough.
Interesting. Or he could have 2 weeks off instead of one, which I would probably advise, but I'm not a member of the Detroit Lions medical team. I'm not a doctor, anything like that. I want to key in on the Marcus Davenport situation because it looks like reports are that he's likely out for the season with a torn tricep. And let's just be honest. Despite the fact that Aiden Hutchinson is playing like a defensive player of the year, which he is, and that Marcus Davenport, I give him credit for having a really good game in Week 1. I'm like, man, we might have our bookends. The way that the potential bookends the way that it's played out so far through 3 weeks, with Davenport likely being out for the season and James Houston not being able to touch the field, it's kind of a disaster at this point. The Marcus Davenport signing, if he doesn't play again the rest of the season, it's a bad signing. It's an absolute fail. Mm-hmm. And it's the risk that you take when you go after a Marcus Davenport because you've seen it throughout his career.
Lengthy.
He got injured, he missed 14 games. He either missed 13 or 14 last year. Either way, it's bad. In his best season in 2021, he only played 11 games. And let's just go to, in 2022, he played almost the full season but only had half a sack. So part of Marcus Davenport's story is injuries and inconsistency. Mm-hmm. And it just makes you wonder, is there something else that the Lions maybe should have done? Should they have gone a different direction in the draft instead of going after a Giovanni Manu? Because we have to shift our expectations of Brad Holmes just a tad. We all agree that Brad Holmes is the best GM in Lions history. His drafting prowess is second to none. He's built this team from the ashes into a perennial playoff team, into one of the Super Bowl favorites. However, I don't want to look back. Let's just say the Lions lose in the playoffs and be like, man, it's Aiden Hutchinson on one end and no pass rush from the other end because Marcus Davenport isn't available and James Houston maybe isn't the player that they all thought that he would be, the player that he showed in 2022. We have to adjust Brad Holmes' expectations to he needs to eventually build this team into a Super Bowl before he gets mentioned in the rarefied air of like a Brett Veach or a Howie Roseman or even like a Les Snead or somebody like that. As a GM, tactically drafting, I would put him up against damn near everybody except maybe Brett Veach. But the point I'm trying to make is that the Marcus Davenport signing looks like a big fat L at a position that the Lions really needed to not take an L.
Man, and you know what? I try to go back to last season as well when we believed that we needed a lot more help along that defensive line, and we did. We needed some additions. But at that point in time, at least with how we saw it through our own perspectives, we thought if they don't do something at the trade deadline to shore up that defensive line, then this team at best will win one playoff game and they're done. And we saw that they were actually a lot better. So when we do talk about Brad Holmes, at least to this point, he's shown that he at least knows what his team's makeup is. And they said last year that they believed after the trade deadline that they had everything they needed to be able to make a run. This year, I was really hoping that we got Davenport, but in the back of my mind, I always expected that he might miss some time. And this is where we talked about, some of the depth that they do have on that defensive line. Is difficult to replace necessarily what Davenport was doing, because I thought he had a good start to the season. But I'm hoping that this is something that Brad Holmes, if you're gonna move, that you move quicker rather than later in the season, for cohesiveness, for chemistry. And that's what I mean about, early in the season, if you're going to get some injuries, for everybody involved, if the player has an opportunity to get healthy, or so that the team can go and make the correct change to kind of keep things as same as possible as you're approaching the playoffs.
Yeah, and to further your point, you'd rather have Iffy miss some games at the beginning and have the Lions be 2-1 without him. Same with Rakestraw, same with them winning a game in which Alex Anzalone doesn't play. Same with them finishing out a game defensively in which Aleem McNeil goes out and Derek Barnes goes out. And Marcus Davenport goes out, and Brian Branch goes out. I mean, on and on and on. And Broder, I got to ask you this.
Hit me.
Because I look at a partially torn pec, and I'm like, Frank Ragnow is the toughest SOB on planet Earth. I know that he's going to want to play, but maybe he shouldn't, at least in this game on Monday Night Football. Are you confident that the Lions' offensive line will be able to hold it together if maybe have to put Graham at center and Coyote or Colby Sorsdahl?
I am hesitantly saying that I am confident, just because it is this offensive line and Hank Fraley's their coach, and it still features Penei Sewell. So I think they're going to be fine. But that's not to downplay how important this loss could be. We'll see what they do. Does Glasgow move to center? Does Yodi go play left guard? Could moving to center be a little jolt for Graham Glasgow to kind of get his game moving a little better this season? I don't know. Losing Frank is a huge thing. It does sound... I don't know what a partially torn pec truly means, especially for a center who needs leverage from your pectoral muscle. Mm-hmm. But, is it a guaranteed IR stint for, any other player in the league? And Frank Ragnow just happens to be week to week? To be determined. But there is something I need to shut some shit down. I need to shut some shit down.
Okay.
Hassan Reddick is not coming to Detroit.
Yes.
They're not trading for Hassan Reddick. They're not doing it. Why would they trade for Hassan Reddick and give him a contract? He's not the type of edge rusher they want anyway. He's more in the James Houston category, more of a speed rusher. They want Marcus Davenport types. They want more like Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals, who are now 0-3, maybe there. Also, as much as I would love to see him on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson, Max Crosby isn't coming here either.
Yeah, unfortunately.
They're not getting rid of him unless you're giving him 3-4 first-round picks.
And my question here is, do they have to do something?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I honestly, I think they give. I think this is the last shot for James Houston. I think they give him opportunity to go, maybe not win that job like he's the only edge rusher. I think Levi's going to push to the outside a little bit more. They're going to do more things with Josh Paschal and Mekhi Wingo in terms of rushing the passer. But I think they're going to give Levi O and James Houston a chance. And maybe you call up Ukwu or Agude from the practice squad. Knowing Brad Holmes, if they're going to make a trade, it is going to be closer to the trade deadline. To be determined if they make a trade, but they're going to give their guys a shot. That's what they do.
And I think that you guys are right, but James Houston, I think we've all lost a little bit of confidence in him. You know why? Because the Lions have lost confidence in him. What are we supposed to do? And Josh Paschal, I think he's been a little bit disappointing so far this year, although it hasn't hurt the defense. I personally would, because I'm seeing Levi Onwuzurike as well, I would prefer for him to be that force up the middle, because he's played a big role in the first 3 games. I mean, you saw in the game against the Arizona Cardinals, it was his bull rush that made James Conner chip him and allow Aiden Hutchinson to win his one-on-one and get a sack. I don't know. With so many uncertainties, it might necessitate a move at the trade deadline. I mean, the Lions, they have to have these guys on a bit of a short leash, because you can't have this defense taking a dip and all of a sudden costing your team games later on in the season. I'm not saying that it necessarily will, but Marcus Davenport, that's a big loss. And we haven't even talked about Derek Barnes looks like he's going to be out a while. Broder, is that something that the Lions should be able to withstand?
Yes. Not that it's not a big loss again, but because that linebacker room is so deep. Like they lost Anzalone, they lost Barnes, and they still held their own against the Cardinals, against the scrambling quarterback.
Versatility of that secondary.
Definitely. Barnes has been playing good, and he's been playing a lot off the edge. Like, I like what he's been doing. So it sucks losing him, and maybe it sucks a little more for him going out in a contract year like this. I'm not worried about the linebacker room. We're talking about Jalen Reeves-Maybin and Malcolm Rodriguez being deeper down in the depth chart. I'm cool with that for a period of time.
Sure. I mean, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, just don't commit personal fouls.
Yeah, that's it.
Because that was a bad penalty. But
besides
the point still stands.
Yeah.
Malcolm Rodriguez was a starter in 2022. Jalen Reeves-Maybin is somebody who has shown when he has to step up is capable of doing that. Even a Ben Neiman, he started a lot of games in the NFL. Kind of a signing that may look a lot bigger as linebackers continue to drop like flies, but it's unfortunate. It's part of the NFL that sometimes when we're all exhilarated off of a big road win at Arizona to get the Lions to 2-1, you look the next day and it's like, damn, Davenport's out for the season.
Yep.
Damn, that Derek Barnes injury looks a little serious. It's sobering,
So
but
it's
it's
the hangover
NFL.
cure. But you know what? What's also sobering is that we've seen the Detroit Lions deal with injuries. Their secondary last year got depleted. We still saw them deal with injuries, and we saw guys step up as that season went on. So it's like knowing the types of guys that the Detroit Lions have, it sucks to see them have these types of injuries. But like Broder said, and like you said, they have the ability within the house, within camp, to be able to give some other guys an opportunity. And we've seen them in the past actually cash in on that. Regardless of what people think about that secondary, they held serve while Mosley got injured early in the season. CJ got injured early in the season. These guys still held serve to the tune of a pretty good season, I think all Lions fans would state. And if the Detroit Lions still have whatever that magic and whatever that mojo is, I do believe that they will find a way to kind of be able to mitigate the damages or the negative effects of some of these losses.
I certainly hope so. But to Broder's point earlier, James Houston, whether it's fair or not, he's probably playing for his career in Detroit.
It's fair. It's absolutely fair.
How good is that re-signing of Brock Wright looking right about now? We thought maybe it was a little expensive in the offseason. San Francisco wanted him. Now Laporta might miss a little bit of time or might not be himself. You got someone who can step up and fill a role.
I don't quite remember the Brock Wright signing being aptly covered everywhere. I do remember on this show, though, when he first signed that qualifying offer, everybody on the show was like, yo, that's going to be a tough loss. Like, man, it's a lot of money for him, but he plays and he does a lot of things for this team. And then when they went and they matched the offer, we came in here and then Broder was like, hey, it's time to cover it.
Let's go.
And it was awesome to see that we teed that up first. That, you know what, this is an important loss. You were on the beat and everything. And it's cool to see that perspective. Now that we have him on the squad right now, it feels like this team, in my opinion, has some insulation against loss.
Yeah. You know you're not going to get Sam Laporta.
Right.
At his best or even improving, but that's a pretty good number two to rely on in a game or two if you need him.
Yep. Man, though, that is well stated.